All right, and I will pass it over to our board president.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Dental Board of California Quarterly Board Meeting. My name is Joanne Pacheco, and I am the president of the board. Today is Thursday, November the 18th, 2021, and this meeting is being held via WebEx. In accordance with Government Code Section 11133, this meeting will be held by teleconference with no physical locations. For all those who wish to participate, please log on to the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, I will ask all board members and speakers to announce themselves by name before speaking for clarity of the official record. All board members are able to unmute themselves to speak during the meeting. Please place yourself back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. When making a motion, please use the raised hand feature to be called upon and then verbally state your motion or second so staff can identify the motion and second for the meeting record. During a discussion on an agenda item, please use the raise hand feature if you want to speak, and I will call on you. Following such online meeting etiquette will ensure the best audio quality for everyone. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comment shortly. When called upon, the moderator will unmute the microphone of the individual and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with the testimony already provided, please just state your name and that you are in support of any comments previously provided. I would now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during this WebEx meeting.
This is the moderator of the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. The moderator will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will be given 2 minutes to make their comments, and at the conclusion of those 2 minutes, that individual's microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When you are making your comment, please make sure that the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views for the sake of members of the public participating in the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. And once again, please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when board members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to please mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during a meeting as a result of an unmuted microphone, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder. And at this point, I'll turn it back to our board president.
Thank you. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask the board secretary to please call the roll.
Thank you. This is Dr. Alan Felsenfeld, board secretary, and I will now call the roll. Burton. Ms. Burton?
Burton here.
Burton present. Chan?
Chan present.
Chan present. Felsenfeld present. Loreen?
Green present.
Loreen present. Mackenzie?
Mackenzie present.
Present present. Medina?
Medina present.
Medina present. Mendoza?
Mendoza present.
Mendoza present. Molina?
Molina present.
Molina present. Montel?
Montel present.
Montel present. Morrow?
Morrow present.
Morrow present. Alagi?
Augie present.
Alagi present. Pacheco?
Pacheco present.
Pacheco present. Stewart?
Stewart present.
Stewart present. You?
You present.
You present. Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Dr. Morris Tuso. And Dr. Tuso, I will request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'm going to request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Okay, great, thanks. Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me take a moment here. I don't know if there's video, if you can see me or not, and either way, as some of the board members may know, or maybe only one or two may know, I'm a dentist and endodontist. I live in San Diego, and the dental board revoked my license just a little over 2 years ago. And because of recent events, it was in connection with my trying, a good part of it was in connection with my trying to report numerous dentists in San Diego area and what I had witnessed and taken evidence of as fraud under Borrego. And in light of all the news articles, the FBI raid, the most recent news article 11 days ago that actually was quoting me in some of what I had observed in my efforts in trying to report it. I had been contemplating with some colleagues and mentors, Dr. Tom Borgia, who's a Dean Emeritus of West Virginia University School of Dentistry, to try to help me formulate some kind of like corrective action plan or proposal to please reinstate my dental license, even with the most stringent.
30 seconds.
of restrictions, it's fine, and that I would be mailing that, and I just did not want to blindside, and I just wanted to state that I would be doing that, and if we could follow up with this and how I would go about following up with that. And just make it part of the formal meeting record today that that is my intention. And just seeking some mercy finally.
All right, this is the moderator, and that was our only individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 3, discussion and possible action on August 19, 2021 board meeting minutes. Is there any board member discussion? And remember to please use the raised hand feature. And I see Dr. Morrow's hand up. Dr. Morrow?
Yes, thank you very much. I just noticed that on page 6 of 16 of these minutes, a typographical error, I think, on the second line of the first paragraph on that page. It says, after reviewing the proposed options to amend the statute, I think it should be statute.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. Any other board member comments?
I'm just going to interrupt. Excuse me. This is Karen Fisher. Dr. Morrow, if you could direct us again, and if you could refer to your meeting materials with the very bottom page number. So I think you're referring to page 11 of 380. And
that's correct. Page 11 of 300. Page 11 of 380 is the page. It's also page 6 of 16 for the minutes. And on the first paragraph of that page, on the second line, the third word is statute. I think it should be statute. I think there's a T left out of the word.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. Dr. Yu?
Oh,
You had your
yes.
hand up?
Hi.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is for the page 19 of page of 380. And for the SB 772, I was written as absent. I don't recall I absent from any kind of a meeting so far. So do you mind to have someone check on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. Any other board member comments? Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the corrections?
So moved. This is Angie Medina.
I'll second. This is Chan.
Thank you. The motion is to approve the minutes by Ms. Medina and Dr. Chan to approve the minutes with the corrections. Are there any public comments? Moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you have a public comment on this agenda item, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And thank you. Board President, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
That would be Board Secretary Felsenfeld. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
The motion is to approve the August board meeting minutes as corrected. Burton.
Burton, aye.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Loreen.
Loreen, aye.
Laureen, I. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, I. Medina.
Medina, I.
Medina, I. Mendoza.
Mendoza, I.
Mendoza, I. Molina.
Molina, I.
Molina, I. Montel.
Montel, I.
Montel, I. Morrow.
Morrow, I.
Morrow, I. Olagi.
Olagi, I.
Olagi, I. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, I. Stewart.
Stewart, I.
Stewart, I. You.
UI.
You, I. It is unanimous. The motion passes.
And thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 4, Board President Report. So in my report and in carrying out my duties as Board President, I continue to meet with the Executive Officer on a weekly basis to discuss the Dental Board of California business. As well as attending meetings pertinent to board business, the meetings that I have attended included the board strategic plan, a Teams meeting with the DCA Office of Human Resources, DCA Board and Bureau Leadership Brown Bag Series. Since this is my last meeting as board president, I would like to thank you for the privilege of serving as the Dental Board of California president, and I'm deeply humbled by your continuous support. But more importantly, I'm proud of the work that we have accomplished during the pandemic. And as we move through our agenda over the next 2 days, let us be reminded that the members of the Dental Board, individually and collectively, are dedicated to the legislative mandate that protection of the public shall be its highest priority. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public will always be paramount. This concludes my report, and we will move on to the next agenda item unless others have comments. Any board members have any comments? Dr. Yu, you have your hand raised. Dr. Yu? Moderator, is that a WebEx hand raised for Dr. Yu?
This is the co-moderator. We can put it down if you like.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 4, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. And just as a general reminder, for members of the public, the question and answer feature is not being used as a means for members of the public to ask questions of the moderator or of members of the board. And please note that public comment is only for the item that we are currently on. If your item is not on topic, we will not be addressing that. So
This is the board president. I see Dr. Yu's hand up again.
Yes, I have problem to hear. Okay, when you give your report, I only hear 1/3 of it, and then that's it. And now, okay, for the Q&A, I didn't hear anything at all. So I wonder whether there's any problem with the connection.
Moderator, do you have any comments for Dr. Yu?
This is the moderator. James, I see that you're connected probably on a mobile device. Are you
Yes.
using the WebEx app?
Yes.
I would suggest trying to call in on a phone because it sounds like your audio connection is not working.
I can hear you now, okay, but then a while ago, okay, when the president was giving the talk, I can only hear 1/3 of it. And then now is if I have any more problem, I'll raise my hand again. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are now ready to move on to agenda item 5, Executive Officer Report. Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, President Pacheco. I am Karen Fisher, the Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California, and I'm going to start my report with the personnel update. This report serves as an update on dental board staffing as of last Friday. There are currently 19 vacancies for board positions based on 84 authorized positions that we have, and that means there's a vacancy rate of approximately 23%. The vacancies can be attributed to new authorized positions not yet filled, retirements, transfers to other departments, and promotional opportunities. And so I'm briefly going to just go through each unit that we have quickly to let you know where we stand. The executive management team is fully staffed. The administrative services unit has 2 vacancies, and they're critical. One of the vacancies is the budget contract analyst. We started advertising for that vacancy in July, and there have been 3 rounds of interviews to fill the position. The board is currently in the interview process right now. And what that means is basically the rounds indicate that we've interviewed people and have not found candidates that we feel would fit in those positions. And so we go out, re-advertise, and re-interview people. The second position in the Administrative Services Unit is the Legislative and Regulatory Analyst. That's been advertised since last January. There have been 5 rounds of interviews to fill the position, but the board has not found a candidate. So what we did was we reclassed the position, meaning we upgraded it to a Staff Services Manager 1 specialist, and we're hoping to find a more qualified candidate. As you all know, this is a very important position. The legislative tracking and presentation to the board, as well as the regulatory language development, requires people who can really write and understand policy issues. 13 interviews have been scheduled in the next 2 weeks, and we're hoping that we will have a successful candidate by the end of the year. The anesthesia unit has 2 vacancies, and there have been a number of rounds of interviews to fill those positions also. We will continue to advertise those positions and fill them as quickly as we can. The licensing and examination unit has 3 vacancies. Again, we're having difficulty finding candidates who show up to the interviews, and then getting through the interview process seems to be difficult for some. So one of those vacancies actually was created by Marilla Turan, who was promoted to our administrative analyst. She is working with us on board meetings and a lot of other administrative things. So the position she left was in the licensing and examination unit, so we're trying to fill behind her. The dental assisting unit has 5 vacancies, and we are recruiting for a dental assisting manager. One of our current managers, Amelia Zulogo, was in that position, and she moved over to the Complaint and Compliance Unit as the manager over there. So we continue to advertise for the educational program and licensing coordinators and some analysts and office technician also. We will work diligently to try to get those filled as soon as possible. There are 3 vacancies in the investigative analysis unit. One special investigator position was advertised in August, and there have been 2 rounds of interviews to fill that position, but the board has not found a candidate. 7 candidates are scheduled this week for that position to be interviewed. And there was a position for an analyst in that unit, and we reclassified that to a special investigator, and interviews will be conducted for that position by the end of the month. We also reclassified an investigative analyst position to an Inspector 2. That was advertised in October. There's been 1 round of interviews to fill the position, but the board has not found a candidate, and the position is currently being re-advertised. There's 1 vacancy in the Complaint and Compliance Unit, and we're currently going through the interview process. The Discipline Coordination is currently fully staffed. There is 1 vacancy in the Sacramento Field Office. The investigator was reclassed to an Inspector 2 and was advertised last month. There has been 1 round of interviews to fill the position, but the board has not found a candidate, so the position will be re-advertised. And the Orange Office has 2 vacancies. The investigator was advertised in April. There have been 2 rounds of interviews to fill the position, but the board's not found a candidate. The position is difficult to fill because it's a sworn peace officer position, and so we'll continue to advertise and try to fill that as quickly as possible. There was an Inspector 2 position advertised last month. There's been 1 round of interviews to fill the position, but the board has not found a candidate that would fit that position. Dental consultants are fully staffed, and in summary, staff has been aggressively recruiting and interviewing candidates to fill vacancies. I believe we have the same problem as a lot of people are having, even out in the private sector, trying to fill positions. The board is offering in-person as well as telephone interviews as optional interviewing methods. And should our current recruitment efforts be successful, it's anticipated that the board could bring the vacancy rate down to 16% by the beginning of the calendar year. I would like to report that we actually had 4 new hires in the month of October. Ricky Parks was hired as an Associate Governmental Program Analyst in our Dental Assisting Unit. And Ricky was formerly with the board, left the board for other promotions, and then came back to us. So we're happy to see that. Emily Osana was hired as a Staff Services Analyst in the Complaint and Compliance Unit in October. And Charlene Kirkwood was hired as a Management Services Technician in the Dental Assisting Unit. And Joshua Vance was hired as a Management Services Technician also in the Dental Assisting Unit. We welcome these 4 new employees to the Dental Board family. And speaking of the Dental Board family, I'll move on to the next item, which is the vacancies that were created in the Dental Assisting Council. Since the last council meeting and board meeting in August, we received resignations from Melinda Casares and Michelle Jawad. Both of them indicated that due to their jobs, they were unable to continue in these positions. Both Ms. Casares and Ms. Jawad held the position designated for a registered dental assistant employed clinically in a private dental practice, public safety net, or dental healthcare clinic. And so a recruitment notice for these 2 vacancies has been posted on the board's website. We also contacted the stakeholder associations and asked them if they would post the recruitment notices on their websites. The application deadline at this time is December 15th. We anticipate that the subcommittee of Ms. Joanne Pacheco and Ms. Rosalinda Olagi will conduct telephone interviews for eligible candidates in January of 2022 and may recommend the board appoint 2 replacements at the February 2022 meeting. My next report will be regarding the subject matter expert training that was held. Dental board staff conducted 2 subject matter expert training sessions via WebEx. The training took place on September 15th from 10:30 to noon, and again on October 1st from noon to 1:30. All subject matter experts were notified in advance of the training and were encouraged to register. The role of the subject matter expert is very important in the disciplinary process. After review of the complaint and dental records, experts provide a written report identifying in detail deviations from the standard of care, which, in his or her opinion, is considered a violation of the Dental Practice Act. Experts also testify at administrative hearings. The training consisted of an overview of the expert's role, a presentation of the new expert guidelines, which had been distributed to participants prior to the training, expert report writing, discussion about the definition of clear and convincing evidence, and things to do and not to do. The training was developed to introduce the new expert guidelines that were developed in order to standardize the report writing of the experts. The hope is that this standardized report writing format will enhance the board's ability to provide clear and convincing evidence to adjudicate disciplinary matters in an efficient, effective, and timely manner. After the training, the board staff provided a follow-up survey to participants. Of the 29 participants in the first session, only 15 responded to the survey. However, of the 41 participants in the second session, 29 responded to the survey. The overall results were as follows. 80% of the participants reported that the training objectives were very clearly or extremely clearly defined. 90% felt that the topics were relevant to them. 90% felt that the content was well organized and easy to follow. 84% felt that the trainer was able to answer all questions and concerns. And only 88% of the participants reviewed the guidelines before the training. Overall, we feel that the training was successful, and it is the plan in the future to offer the training perhaps quarterly to new consultants as they come on, and to give refresher courses periodically, and more will be reported on the expert training in the future. The next item on the agenda is the update on the COVID-19 vaccination and testing requirements. On July 26th of 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom announced the state of California was taking decisive action to combat the spread of COVID-19 by implementing a first-in-the-nation standard to require all state workers to either show proof of full vaccination or be tested for COVID at least once per week when working on site. In response to these requirements, DCA, in coordination with CalHR and the California Department of Public Health, has developed a testing program to serve the department, its 36 entities, and its employees. DCA began a phased implementation of the testing program by successfully launching its pilot testing site at the DCA Headquarters 1 on October 7th. Dental board employees entered into the third testing phase, which began October 28th. Testing at DCA Headquarters 1 site will continue to be provided weekly on Thursdays from 8 a.m. to noon, and will use the PCR tests. These tests are provided by the state's testing vendor. Employees subject to testing at DCA headquarters are notified by their manager of the requirement to test on a weekly basis. At this time, I would like to give strong kudos to Director Kirkmeyer and Chief Deputy Lawley. They've done an excellent job ensuring the testing program runs smoothly and is successful while maintaining strict confidentiality. Thank you for the hundreds of hours you have put into this program and for your monumental effort to protect the health and safety of consumers and state employees. And I'm just going to take a little pause at this point and ask board members if there are any questions about what I have mentioned in my report so far before I move on to the next two items. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm
hi.
going to keep.
This is Alicia. I do have my hand raised, so that's interesting, but I just have a question.
Go ahead.
Just as a new board member, speaking about the vacancy rate for the personnel, can you just give me a sense of what it normally is so I can understand if 16% is normal, if you're looking at that for, you know, the new year possibly? Is that getting us a little bit back to normal, or is that still high, or can you just give me a sense of that?
I think historically we tend to have a 10 to 15, maybe 10 to 17% vacancy rate. And that's just, you know, people cycling in and out. The way the state is set up, it does afford employees to be able to move on to other departments or agencies, to move for promotional reasons, or perhaps other jobs are closer to where they work, or perhaps people just aren't happy here and they want to move on. So getting it down to a 16% vacancy rate is much better. We're never fully staffed.
Okay, thanks. That helps a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, Dr. Montel, I'm not seeing a hand raised, and maybe that was maybe people can't do that anymore. So, oh, it just sort of flickered on and off. If there are no other questions or comments about what I've said so far, I'm going to just move on, unless somebody just wants to jump in and unmute themselves. Okay, I'm going to move on then. And at this point, we're just at the acknowledgement of outgoing board members. Today, we're saying goodbye to 3 board members, Fran Burton, Ross Lai, and Tom Stewart. Ms. Burton was first appointed as a public member to the board by President Pro Tem of the Senate, Darrell Steinberg, in 2009. She served as president of the board 3 times, in 2014, 2015, and 2019. She was vice president in 2013 and has held the position of chair of the Legislative and Regulatory Committee for her entire term. Dr. Ross Lai was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in February of 2013 and served as the chair of the board's Licensing, Certification, and Permits Committee. And Dr. Stewart was also first appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in February of 2013. Dr. Stewart has served as board president twice, in 2018 and 2020. He served as vice president in 2017 and chair of the Substance Abuse Awareness Committee. Today, on behalf of members and staff of the Dental Board of California, we recognize each of you for your service and dedication to the board's mission to protect the public. You will be receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by President Pacheco, and I believe that staff are showing the different certificates essentially that the outgoing members will be receiving. It's been my honor and privilege to have served as executive officer under your leadership. You will all be missed. Best wishes and much happiness for continued good health and success in your future endeavors. And lastly, but certainly not least, the recognition of our outgoing president. Ms. Joanne Pacheco was first appointed by Governor Brown in 2018. She served as board secretary in 2021, secretary in 2020, and was voted in as the first dental hygienist to serve as the board president during this last year. Today, board members and staff recognize you for your leadership during 2021 with a plaque. Thank you for your service. And staff has essentially tried to put a picture of what the plaque looks like. up on the screen. So this concludes my executive officer report. I will now turn it back over to President Pacheco for member and public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Are there any board member comments? I see the hand raised of Montel.
Hi, I don't know what's going on with my hand raising, but sure, I'd love to make a comment anyway. I would like to thank both Joanne Pacheco and Fran Burton for their service here. I would like to say, I never got to meet you, but I just saw both your little pictures, but I want to say that listening to you, the way you approach your roles has actually taught me what to do. So I just want to thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And Dr. Loren.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to second that, and I appreciate everybody's hard work. Outstanding work as president for yourself and the board members that are leaving. I just want to say thank you so much. You did a great job, everybody. It was nice meeting you. I hope we all keep in touch.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Morrow. Dr. Morrow?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks. I also want to express my appreciation and thanks for the outgoing members of the board. You have all been a member of a family of mine, and I appreciate working with you and knowing you, and hope that we can continue to have a relationship. And also, especially, I want to mention my appreciation to Fran Burton. Fran has been a steady member of the board. She has added significantly to the dental profession, and if I had the power to do so, I would make Fran Burton an honorary member of the dental profession. Thank you, Fran, for all that you've done for us.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. Dr. Yu? Dr. Yu? We'll circle back to Dr. Yu. Ms.
Yes,
Burton?
I'm sorry.
Dr.
Yes.
Yu. Yes.
Yes, I just want to give my appreciation for Frank and also for Dr. Stewart. They has been an excellent role model for me, and then I can see that they have the highest standard, and then to serve the public and also to work in the board. And then all the service has been excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. Ms. Burton?
Hello.
We can barely hear you.
How about now?
It's a little bit better. Can you come just a little bit closer?
Well, I don't know what's going on here. I did it, and my volume is up as high as it can go.
It's better now.
I just wanted to say that it has been a pleasure to serve on the Dental Board of California and to have all my previous colleagues and my current colleagues as members in this journey of ours. And what I constantly preach was the importance of serving the public and keeping the public in front of us. And I hope that you will, as you serve, continue to do that as well, and not lose sight of the fact that public protection is what we're all about. So thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Any other board member comments? Are there any public comments? DCA moderator? Oh,
My hand was up. I'm sorry.
this is Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart.
Dr. Stewart. I just want to add my thanks to my colleagues. It has been a great team. It's been a great group of folks to work with, and it's been such a privilege and a blessing. So thank you, all of you, past and present. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. We will miss you, and Ms. Burton. Rosalinda, I see your hand is up as well.
Thank you. I wanted to, as the RD on the board, send very much thanks to Dr. Stewart, Dr. Morrow, and Ms. Burton for your leadership and helping guide me with the council and just my role here on the board. And really say thank you to Fran mentioned, continuing to serve the public and elevate yourself to continue to give back. And my journey with my PhD started, and it's my second year. So thank you to all three of you for always encouraging that, especially Dr. Morrow. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olagi. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And just as a general reminder, the moderators are using the Q&A feature as a means to allow members of the public to indicate that they would like to make a comment. Unfortunately, our only option to clear comments from the queue is to say answered verbally. So while you may have asked a question and it says answered verbally in the response, it's not, that's just our way of clearing the queue for us. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and start with, I'll start going in the order of comments requested. Looks like we have a request from Anthony Lum. Anthony, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. All right, and you are unmuted.
Good afternoon. This is Anthony Lum, the Executive Officer of the Dental Hygiene Board. Over the years, I've been attending the dental board meetings and have, especially in person, and have really gotten to know all three of these board members, Ms. Burton, Dr. Lai, and Dr. Stewart. And I just really appreciate all the communications we've had, whether it's professionally or personally. And just want to let you know that you will be missed, and I'll miss our relationships and discussions that we've had over the past. So thank you so much in your cooperation to work with my board. And I really appreciate all the efforts that we've discussed over the years. So take care and be well. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we will move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Dr. Moratuso, request to unmute your microphone now. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I just had a question, and obviously this is my first California Dental Board meeting I've ever attended. I know you were talking about your investigators or your sworn peace officers. Are they're licensed under the state of California? Is that correct? And that they would be mandated reporters under that licensure? Is my question. When I practiced in Massachusetts, like I had suspected child abuse and reported it, and the Massachusetts Dental Board, though we are mandated reporters as doctors, they are mandated reporters. So I just was trying to clarify: is that the case the same with California sworn peace officers? Thank you.
Dr. Tuso, this is Karen Fisher, Executive Officer. Unfortunately, the public comment is not an opportunity for you to ask questions. Board staff will be happy to answer that question if you'd like to send us an email. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and I will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Bruce Witcher. All right, Bruce, I will request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning.
You.
Right, you're unmuted now.
Okay, it took me a bit to get unmuted, sorry.
No
I
worries.
really didn't want to miss this opportunity to thank all of the outgoing board members. Some of you may not know this, but Ms. Burton and I came on the board at the same time, and I'll never forget attending the board orientation with her. I knew I was going to be in for a treat with her as a fellow board member. And most notably, I'd like to thank her for all of her help with dental anesthesia issues. She gave a public member perspective that was very valuable to me personally going through that particular ordeal. And I would second Dr. Morrow's suggestion that Fran be given an honorary dental degree of some sort if Loma Linda could confer that on her. As for other outgoing board members, I'd really like to thank Ross Lai for his terse and very witty comments from time to time, and also sharing membership on LCP committee with him. That was a great experience. And of course, Tom Stewart, longtime colleague of mine from across the valley over in Bakersfield. And we always enjoyed a collegial relationship. I think was something that was a special aspect of having him on the board for me personally. And Joanne, I'd really like to thank you for your leadership this past year. I think you just did an exemplary job as president. And it just shows that whoever is on the board, provided that they convince their fellow board members to support them in a run for the presidency of the board, should certainly take the opportunity to do so as a great learning experience. So thank you to you all. And I just appreciate the opportunity to serve with those of you that I did when I was on the board. That's my comment. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Ross Lai. Ross, I will request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'm requesting to unmute your microphone now.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
So, it's been my honor to be on the board for 8 years and appreciate all the board members that have taught me and brought me along and to a point where we really put the public ahead of ourselves in everything we did. So that was one of the great learning experiences for me. Mostly, I would like to thank Karen and the staff because they made my life very easy. And it's sad, but there again, I know all the new board members will carry on and continue the great work that we tried to do. And I just appreciate my board members from Bruce and Steve and other Steve. We had 3 Steves. We had Steve Casagrande, Yvette. We had great conversations and always had time and to disagree to agree to disagree. And so with that, I thank Karen and the rest of the board and especially the staff for your time with me. Thank you very much.
All right, this is the moderator. I have a hand raised from Susan McLaren. Susan, I will request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Susan, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted.
Yes. Yes. California Dental Hygienists Association is so very proud of Mrs. Pacheco, especially for her careful consideration with which she presented the issues, her leadership expertise, and the selfishness with which she fulfilled her office. Thank you very much, Joanne.
All right, that appears to be our last individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And thank you all for your wonderful comments. As you can see, it is never goodbye. It is just see you later. We will now move on to agenda item 6, report on the Department of the Consumer Affairs DCA activities. I will ask Brianna Miller from the DCA Office of Board and Bureau Relations to provide this report.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon. I'm Brianna Miller with the Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide a department update to your board today. And before I get started, I would first like to also recognize members Burton and Stewart, as well as Dr. Lai. Thank you on behalf of the department for your years of service on the board. DCA greatly appreciates your service and your commitment to consumer protection. Additionally, on behalf of the department, I'd like to also recognize the service of Executive Officer Karen Fisher. I feel particularly honored to do so as I had the privilege of working with Karen during my first ever job with DCA at the Veterinary Medical Board. It was so wonderful working with you then, and it has remained an honor to continue to work with you under various capacities since. On behalf of the Department of Consumer Affairs, we appreciate your hard work, service, and unrelenting dedication to consumer protection, and we wish you nothing but the best in your upcoming retirement. To begin my update, I'd like to first discuss COVID-19 safety measures and telework. DCA appreciates all board members, committee members, and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected all of us in many ways. We're working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while keeping safe and healthy. DCA and its boards and bureaus continue to look to the future and use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective consumer protection and public service while also utilizing telework where appropriate. Next, I'll discuss testing and vaccination verification. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California has implemented enhanced safety measures for state employees and workers in healthcare settings. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October, as was mentioned earlier, with the launch of the DCA Headquarters 1 pilot site. Select programs are designated to test at Headquarters 1, and the list of programs recently expanded due to the capabilities of the site. Board and committee members must follow health and safety protocols if they plan to visit a DCA location or attend an in-person board meeting. Members must verify vaccination or follow testing protocols. Please communicate any plans for in-person meetings as soon as possible so that DCA can assist with coordination of teleconference options for the public, vaccination verification, and COVID-19 testing. Next, I'll discuss remote meetings. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. As the law stands today, remote meetings are allowed until January 31, 2022, after which time meetings will need to be in person in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meetings Act. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but I think we can all recognize there are benefits to remote meeting options, such as increased public participation, cost savings, and a lower carbon footprint due to reduced travel. DCA encourages boards and bureaus to continue utilizing remote meetings this year to protect the health of staff, board members, and the public, and we will keep you updated on any additional changes to meeting requirements. Moving on to a note about appointments and recruitment. Whether meeting remote or in person, DCA wants to help keep your board fully seated with excellent members and diverse voices. As of today, the board has one vacancy, a public member appointed by the governor. DCA's communications team has been working on a new communications toolkit to assist boards with member recruitment, which will be available in multiple languages before the end of the year. In the meantime, I encourage individuals who are interested in serving as a board member to visit the Board Member Resources Center, which can be found on DCA's homepage, to apply for an appointment. And next, I'll discuss scam alerts. DCA has been made aware of various scams affecting boards and bureaus. We have shared information about these scams on the DCA website and social media. Please take a moment to visit the DCA Fraud Alert website, which you can find by going to DCA's website, dca.ca.gov, to learn about these scams and how to protect yourself from malicious individuals. And finally, I'd like to provide you with a reminder about required board member trainings and the learning management system. And that reminder is that 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. This means that all employees and board members are required to complete the training during this year, which is rapidly approaching its end. Board members can access this training through the Learning Management System, or LMS for short, which is DCA's training portal. We have created profiles for each of you in the LMS and informed your executive officer of the steps you will need to take to log in and access the training. Board and Bureau Relations is also happy to assist you with any questions or concerns you may have about using LMS. And that concludes my presentation. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist your board, please do not hesitate to reach out. And with that, I will hand it back over to President Pacheco. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Are there any board member comments? Please use the raised hand feature. And I see the hand raised by Ms. Burton.
Somebody who can do something about that hand should, because it's not of my doing.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Burton. Any board member comments? Seeing none. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator, and I have a request from Dr. Moratuso. Dr. Tuso, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Give me one moment while I get my timer up. All right, I'll be requesting to unmute your microphone now.
Yeah, hi again. Thank you to everyone for tolerating me, I imagine is what this must be. So there are a few colleagues and mentors that are aware that I'm attending this today. I am curious about, because the dental board falls under the purview of the Department of Consumer Affairs, and the sad downfall for my license revocation reporting Borrego and the fraud and the numerous California dentists that I witnessed and all the evidence that I acquired. What are DCA's plans with the Dental Board of California? What are you doing to protect the public's interest in terms of thwarting what now is over $400 million in fraud that I didn't even know I was witnessing? I thought it was about $10 million in fraud. I'm just curious what the Department of Consumer Affairs and Dental Board is doing actively to protect the public's interests. Or that's my statement. That's all. Thank you, guys.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
Thank you, moderator. We will now move on to agenda item 7, budget report, and agenda item 7A, presentation from the DCA on need for potential fee increase. I will ask Wilbert Ramboa, Administrative Services Manager, followed by representatives from the DCA Budget Office to present this agenda item.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Wilbert Rambawa, Administrative Services Manager. We have worked with the Budget Office to provide the budget report based on questions received in the past and to talk about a potential fee increase. With that being said, I would like to introduce Matt Nishimini from the Budget Office, who will be going through the budget report for agenda item number 7.
Hello, this is Matt Nishimini. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Before I start my presentation, I would like to, on behalf of the Budget Office, recognize Ms. Fisher's outstanding tenure as the board's executive officer. We certainly have appreciated her leadership, and thank you again for all your service. To start my presentation, I would refer to Mr. Rambawa's memo beginning on page 25 of 380. The memo is a standalone document. It's very clear and informative, but we would like to walk through it and provide the board with some additional comments. The background. So the Dental Board of California administers the State Dentistry Fund, which derives its revenues primarily through license fee related fees. So that would be your exam fees, your initial license, your biennial renewal fees, and the like. And those revenues are used to fund the board's ongoing operations. The board receives an annual budget appropriation each year upon the release of the governor's budget, which is January 10th, and is finalized with the Budget Act. And our fiscal year begins July 1. The board is statutorily required to remain within its appropriation spending limit and to ensure the fund's ongoing solvency, which we're going to discuss in a few minutes. As the administrators of the fund, the board members and the EO have a fiduciary responsibility for ensuring the spending does not exceed the annual budget limit and that the fund does remain solvent. The Budget Office's role is to provide support services so the board members are able to make informed decisions to meet these fiduciary responsibilities. The next section is the fiscal year 2020-21 prior year, or PY, expenditure summary. This is just a snapshot of what the spending was from last year. The board was appropriated $17.686 million, of which you spent $14.309 million, which resulted in savings of $3,377,000. That savings remains in the fund. It's just money that was unspent. The next section provides more detail, and that begins with the attachment 1, which starts on page 28. And this is the detail of how the spending occurred. And in this, we actually have the prior 2 years. We've got 2 green columns. That's the 1920 budgeted and actual expenditures. And then we've got the 2021 budget. And then we've got the pre-closing. We haven't closed the books yet on the 2021 fiscal year, but we're getting close. As you can see, spending was relatively stable in those 2 years. In 1920, the appropriation was 10.4 million, and you spent about 7.5 million. Last year, the appropriation was 9.7 million, and you spent about the same, 7.6 million. The savings or the savings can primarily be attributed to the vacancy rate, the high vacancy rate. As we continue down on page 28, this lists all the operating expenses and equipment. And you can see again that the year-over-year spending is relatively stable, but I would note a couple of things. One being the Attorney General line item costs, which is buried in CP Services Internal. It's right about in the middle. And the board in the blue was budgeted 2.564 million and spent 2.3 million. That's an increase of about 900,000 year over year. And so that's going to be attributed to increased caseloads sent to the AG. And there were some increases, recent increases in AG costs as well. We would also notice that travel costs, since you curtailed travel last year, travel costs nearly went to zero. But overall spending at the bottom, you can see in the 1920 year was 13.8 million, and last year was 14.3 million. So again, relatively stable. And I can answer any questions if anyone has any questions, or we can just continue on to the fund condition statement. Not seeing any hands raised, so we can just keep going. And at the end of my presentation, if you have a question or have questions, I can resolve those then. So now we're looking at page 29. And this is the board's fund condition statement. And this document is read top to bottom and left to right. For those of you who've not or are not familiar with the fund condition statement, it's essentially a bank statement. It's going to start with the starting balance, and it's going to log your revenues and your expenditures, and then it's going to end with an ending balance. This document is prepared and is presented in the annual governor's budget, except in the governor's budget, there's only 3 columns. So in this one, we've had multiple columns. So we've got the 2021 prior year, PY, and those were pre-actuals. And then moving left to right, we've got CY, which is the current year, or the 21-22 year. Budget year is 22-23, and ongoing. So we've provided this additional horizon to demonstrate that the board will be going insolvent in the far right in the 26-27 fiscal year. We've got, if you look at all the way at the bottom, it's got a minus 0.6 months in reserve. And I'm going to explain this in more detail in a second as we go down this. But let's start in the 2021 column and we'll move down. So the way we read this is at the beginning of the year, the board started with $14.319 million. And then there was a prior year adjustment. So the department and the Department of Finance and the State Controller's Office, we worked together, and we know what cost occurred in the prior year, but then the State Controller, actually, we do this drill and we see if there's any other monies in there or any expenditures that haven't been booked. And so that's a prior year adjustment. And so the starting balance is $14.172 million. Moving down into your revenues, we see delinquent fees, renewal fees, that's the bulk. Those are your biennial renewal fees. Other regulatory fees. These are certificates. The board has a few certificates, not a lot of revenue there. And then your other regulatory license fees and permits. These are your initial license fees, would also include exam fees and some of your initial permitting fees. Moving down, there's some income from surplus investments and unclaimed warrants and checks. these are very minor revenue inputs. Total revenues last year were 18.678 million. And then moving down. So last year, the board provided a $4.991 million general fund loan to the general fund as part of the COVID pandemic. There was also, some of you may remember, there was also another 984 general fund loan that was supposed to be booked, but that loan actually never occurred. And so some of you may be thinking, well, why am I not seeing that 984? That one never occurred. So the Department of Finance was going to execute that, but then they decided that it wasn't necessary. And so we've not represented it here. We've not reported it here. But there is that 4.9 million outstanding general fund loan. Moving down, expenditures, that 1111 program expenditures. So that's the $14.3 million that we just went over in detail. Moving down, there's also a couple of other direct charges to the fund. One would be supplemental payment, pension payments. There was an unfunded liability with our pension payments a few years ago, and bargaining units agreed to build that up. And so that's what that line is. And then statewide pro rata of 783,000. This pays for the governor's office, the state controller's office, and the like. And that is a calculated based upon a percentage of cash flow going through the fund. And the 783, if you go to the right, you see it goes up to 1149, 1 million. So you're going to ask, well, why is that increasing so much? So the estimate, the 1149, is just an estimate because they don't actually know how much cash you're going to be bringing in through the fund in the current year. But the idea is that it's going to trend to about 7 or 8% of the cash flow going through the fund in any given year. So it's going to go up and it's going to go down. We've represented it in ongoing years, flatlined at the 1149, but it will fluctuate as revenues come through the fund. At the bottom, we have a grade section. Well, actually, right below that, right above that, we've got 12,449,000 remaining in the fund. That was our ending balance from the last fiscal year, which represents 7.3 months in reserve. Months in reserve, you can think of it as if in the event no additional revenues were brought into the fund, the board could operate for 7.3 months moving forward. So that 12,449 will go up to the top of the current year, and you see that there. And then again, we show the inputs. We're currently estimating about 18.3 million in revenues, and this board has a very stable licensee population, and we can see that it's primarily funded through the renewal license fee, through the biennial renewal license fees. And then moving down, the current year appropriation is 18,488 million. And then we've got this GSI, 4.55%, 530,000. So this was also a bargaining unit agreement, and it's a employee compensation increase. So we're going to see that. And then again, the supplemental pension payments, and then pro rata. And so at the bottom, we can see that there's less money in the reserve balance. Now we're down to 12.3 million, or 5.9 months in reserve. So we see that there's a declining fund balance. And if we look, if we look out to the right in the gray, it is declining, but you're going to be getting some monies back. So let's discuss that. So you've got this general fund loan of 4.499 million, and that has to be returned at some point whenever the board needs it. And the board and the department, we will work with the Department of Finance on scheduling that repayment. We currently have it in the 23-24 year, and that is a placeholder. And I'm going to explain why we have that as a placeholder right now. It's not actually scheduled, but in the event the board wants to increase fees through its regulatory process, we would want that money returned on or about the same time we do that fee increase. And so that's why we've pegged it there. We also have 2.915. So if you recall, the board is also the administrator of the Dental Assistant Fund. And in 2019, AB 1519 abolished that fund effective July 1, 2022, so this next summer. And so those monies are going to have to be transferred over into the fund. And our current estimates right now are 2.915 million being returned into the fund. So that's nice. And then we see moving out to the 23-24 year, we've got 5.075. So that's the 4.9 million being returned plus interest income. And we're estimating about $25,000 for every 12-month period currently. And so over a 3-year period, that would equate to 75,000. So that's the increase there. Of note, what we want to focus on is the revenues. So the revenue line item is about $18.3 million. And it's pretty, we think it's pretty consistent and pretty steady. And then if we look down towards the bottom, we've got total expenditures. So we've got 15.4 million in last year, and then it goes up to 20.485, and then 21,040,000, and then 21.6 million. So it's increasing over time, and it's increasing because there are employee compensation and retirement increases that staff receives annually as part of bargaining agreements. And so as costs will go up over time. But if your revenues are staying flat, then that delta is going to increase over time. And we call this a structural imbalance. We call that a structural imbalance occurs when revenues are less than expenditures. And structural imbalances always accelerate and increase over time for just those reasons, because of the employee compensation. And there could be other legislative mandates that require additional resources, that the board would have to request additional resources through the legislative process, through the annual budget process, a budget change proposal. And that would exacerbate the structural imbalance. So in the near future, you can see that, you know, you've got this 6 months in reserve in the budget year column and 6.6, but that's because you've got that other monies coming in. You've got the 2.9 from the Dental Assistance Fund, and then you've got the repayment of the 5 million. But the real thing to focus on is the structural imbalance, and that it's going to be growing over time, and that at some point in the future, you're going to have to take some action, some corrective actions. And the board, as you board members, you have basically 3 options. You could reduce spending, you could increase fees, or you could do some combination of the two, right? Now, you're going to say, well, we only spent 14.3 million. And so what is the likelihood that we are going to be fully expending? And particularly since it was mentioned before that the board has a high vacancy rate and has a historical vacancy rate of 10 to 15%. Well, to the extent those vacancies are filled, your savings are going to be less. And to the extent other costs, enforcement-related activities we see are on the rise, we would think that the board will trend more towards fully expending its appropriation in the future. The good news and the good position that the board is in is that, so the board's fees are all set in statute, and they're also set by regulations. And currently, the regulations are below the statutory caps in almost every license type. And that affords the board flexibility to increase its fees through the regulatory process and not through the statutory process, which takes more time, would take a bill. So the regulatory process typically takes about 18 to 24 months to promulgate regulations, sometimes a little faster. The regulations have to come before the board, and you have to consider which fees to increase, what makes it, what your goals are. You can see that even though the structural imbalance is going to be upwards of $5 million in out years, you don't necessarily have to completely eliminate the structural imbalance. You could opt to reduce it. You have many choices right now, so I'm glad that we're here to help you guys with your consider these options. The plan, I think, right now is for over the next few months is for the department, for the budget office to work with the board to identify which fees to increase or which fees would are open to increase, and then we can come back to the board and present it to the board, and then you guys can make those informed decisions based upon what your goals are. Do you want to completely eliminate the structural imbalance? Do you want to just reduce it? Do you want to increase, this set of fees and not reduce these other fees? These are going to give you a lot of options. The good news is that you have enough room within your statutory authority to eliminate your structural imbalance. If you were to raise various fees to the statutory maximum, you could eliminate your structural imbalance. We've done that analysis, but you guys are going to have to think about what you want to do, what your goals are, and it's really the right time because a regulatory fee increase takes about 18 to 24 months. That's why we have the $5 million being returned in the 23-24 year. It's about 2 years from now. A statutory increase is going to take an additional year, probably 3 years. Statutory fee increase, typically we do a fee study. The board would contract with an independent third-party fee contractor to determine what the proper level of statutory fee level should be. And then we would need to find a legislative author to carry that bill. And sometimes it's carried, during the sunset, your sunset bill, or sometimes the DCA has a DCA-wide fee bill. So there are options. I don't see that you need a fee bill in the near future. I think you just need to decide what your goals are, what your priorities are, and then we can come back and we can review which fees you would like to increase in the future through the regulatory process. And with that, I can take any questions.
Dr. Molina, did you have a question?
But as he continued discussing, then it was cleared. Thank you.
Doctor. And I believe next was, okay, the hands are moving around here. Dr. Chan?
Thank you. Matt, that was a very complex equation that you presented. You answered part of the question about the vacancy, the traditional vacancies. And the assumption is that if we were fully funded, that the revenue would still exceed the expenditures because it's not expended. What happens to the gap of the unexpended revenue in terms of, does it go into reserves to help smooth out the shortfall in the future?
Yes, thank you for that question. Right, it would just remain in the fund. So any unspent monies just remain in the fund. So to give you some perspective, the months in reserve right now are bouncing around in the mid 6, 5 to 7 range right now, currently. which we would consider a healthy, prudent reserve. The Department of Finance considers anything between 3 and 6 months a prudent, healthy reserve. However, the board has statutory authority to go up to 24 months. So while 6 months is healthy, in some cases, programs opt to have a higher fund balance reserve. In the event, it's typically in the event they get, there's some litigation, they might get sued, a big lawsuit, might take $5 million or $10 million. I don't see that happening here with you guys, but maybe I'm wrong, but again, it's your decision on what you think your prudent reserve should be. At the end of the day, again, you guys are the fiduciary, you're the administrators of the fund, and it's your responsibility, and that lies with you. So if you guys want a 10-month reserve, then that's, that would be something that you guys should target. You guys need to decide as a policy decision. Some people are more risk averse than others, right? Some people, think, oh, 6 months, that's really not very much. Where other people might think, well, 6 months is perfectly satisfactory.
This is Sarah Walls, Assistant Executive Officer. Matt, I just wanted to jump in. Actually, I don't believe the board does have a statutory cap on the months in reserve that we can have for our fund. We typically shoot for the 3 to 6 months in reserve based on our work with the budget office during our prior fee increases. Historically, we do underspend our appropriation, and so while it does appear on paper that we have a structural imbalance because we have to assume full expenditure of the appropriation, historically, we've underspent every year in the appropriation, which has helped us push out the need to have a fee increase. And so I wanted to clarify, we asked Matt and the budget office to come to this meeting. Board staff are constantly monitoring the condition of our fund. Every year we do drills, do analysis of our workload and revenue to determine where we are with our fees. The last time we did a fee increase, I believe it was in 2017 or 2018. At that time, we had expected that we would most likely need to have another fee increase go into effect this fiscal year, which is not the case, obviously, with the current condition of the fund. And so what we found is the need to have a fee increase consistently is being pushed out. So we're walking this fine line of determining the time frame of when we actually need to take action because we will truly have a structural imbalance versus what appears to be a structural imbalance on paper. And so at this point, there isn't an urgent need. I believe Board Member McKenzie had asked about this at the August meeting, and so we wanted to provide this presentation to explain the process. In consultation with Budget Office, board staff are working through a workload and revenue analysis, assuming certain fees are increased to statutory caps that we currently have in place. We will most likely need to do a fee study over the course of the next year, which was anticipated through our work in our last fee increase 5 to 6 years ago. It's good practice to do a periodic fee study. And so as we go into sunset review, I think this is probably going to be the right time to have all of these different avenues of monitoring our fees and our revenue sources come together. So we're looking at the potential for board staff bringing forward a proposal to the board probably by the end of next year, towards the end of next year, for a fee increase to raise certain fees to the current statutory cap while simultaneously looking for a vendor to do a fee study to make sure that our current fees that are being assessed are on the right track so that we can report that in our sunset review report to have that included as part of our statutory changes that come up in 2023. I hope that helps to clarify. We do typically revert money every year because, as Dr. Chan mentioned, we don't typically spend our full appropriation, so that difference in the revenue does end up getting reverted. So I just wanted to clarify where we're at. This isn't we're not in any dire need. We're, I think, one of the few boards that are actually in a really good position because we've done recent fee increases. So, but we just need to constantly monitor where we're at and determine what the best course of action at the right time is going to be.
Thank you,
This
Ms.
is Chan.
Wallace.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hands raised for Ms. Medina. Did you have a question?
Actually, my question was answered by Sarah. That my concern was the urgency of this issue here, and she answered that. But I just want to also thank Matt for this presentation. It was very informative, and I think he explained a complex issue is about as simply as you can. So thanks.
Thank you. And Dr. Laren.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just, Sarah, Sarah answered a lot of my questions, but I do have a question. Would this have anything to do with the merger of the dental assisting fund and the main fund? I mean, does this have any effect on this? And I think there's some money left over in the dental assisting fund that's going to be transferred next year. Is that, I mean, I don't know how much it is, but is that going to help it at all?
Yes.
That is correct, and I'll defer to Matt, but bottom line though, the combination of the dental assisting fund into the state dentistry fund didn't impact our revenue or our potential structural imbalance. It's actually going to make moving forward with implementation of future fee increases a lot simpler, and you are correct, Dr. Laring. The funds that are left in that state dental assisting fund will be transferred back into the state dental dentistry fund, which will aid in our months in reserve as well. But Matt, do you want to clarify on the details of that?
Yes, so that fund, the dental assistance fund, will be abolished at the end of this current fiscal year, and there's about $2.9 million in it, and that will be transferred into the dentist fund, into the state dentistry fund. And I just wanted to follow up and reiterate what Sarah said, that there is no real urgency here. I think what we're trying to convey is that you're in a very good spot. You don't always spend all your full appropriation, but you have lots of options. But there is this structural imbalance there that you need to be cognizant of, and that it is going to accelerate over time. And at some point in the future, you would want to take some sort of action. But right now, in the immediate future, you guys are very healthy, and you've got this, almost $8 million that are going to be coming back into the fund in the next 24 months. So you are very healthy right now, but at some point you will want to take some action.
And I think we have some money that's owed to us from the state also that's going to be repaid. I don't know when that's going to be repaid with interest. Next, I don't know. Does anybody know when we're going to get that money back?
Are you referring to the $5 million general fund?
Yes,
model?
yes.
Yes, so that will be repaid in the future. So so right now on page 29, we have that represented in the 23-24 fiscal year. It's not officially scheduled yet. We put it here to give you some sort of optics to kind of plan, but it will be returned with interest. And the interest is approximately $25,000 for every 12-month period.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Matt, just to clarify, if we did move forward with a regulatory proposal later this year to increase the caps, the general loan would have to be repaid before we can implement those fee increases. Is that correct?
So there is no statutory requirement related to a regulatory increase. If you were to have a statutory fee increase, then yes, they would have to be returned. However, we would work with the Department of Finance to coordinate that the return of the $5 million in court, as you increase the fees. It just makes sense, right? We don't want to increase fees with a $5 million loan outstanding. So we would work with them and they would accommodate us.
Thank you, Matt.
Are there any board member comments? Any other comments? I see a hand raised Ms. Medina and Dr. Molina, did your questions get answered? Okay.
This is Angie Medina. My questions were answered. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Very good. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment, individual identified as Bruce Witcher. Bruce, I will request to unmute your microphone now. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning.
Thank you for that report. That was very helpful. A couple of observations. There was some discussion of increases in Attorney General and Office of Administrative Hearing fees. A couple of years ago, that was not combined with CNP External Services. It was its own line item. And if that is something where we're going to have future increases in our costs, it might be helpful to have a separate line item available in these budget reports so we can see how that's trending. The other observation I have is our licensing population does increase over time, and I don't know if we want to rely on that increase. I think it's probably 600 licensees a year or something like that. So we probably wouldn't want to bank on that. But it would be interesting to project whether that's going to affect our income over the year enough to make much of a difference. And thanks for pointing out where the missing $585 million loan went. It didn't happen, apparently. I was kind of hoping, even though that probably wouldn't make much of a difference, it would be something that we could call on. So thanks for laying this all out. It was very helpful. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and it appears that was our only request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And I would like to thank Mr. Rambawa and Mr. Nishimini for their thorough report. And with that, we are going to take a 15-minute break, returning at 3:05. Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 8, report on Dental Hygiene Board of California DHBC activities. I would like to ask Dr. Timothy Martinez, President of the Dental Hygiene Board of California, to provide this report.
Did you hear that first sentence or not?
No, we did not.
Good afternoon, President Pacheco, board members, and staff. I'm Dr. Timothy Martinez, the board's president, and participating with Anthony Lum, the board's executive officer, who's also on the call, to report the Dental Hygiene Board activities to you. We've been busy since our last report in May 2021 with the focus on the following. Number one, COVID. During the continued pandemic, dental hygienists maintain the use of standard precautions, including patient temperature checks, health questions, extensive use of PPE, and properly cleaning and sterilizing operatories in between dental treatments to protect themselves and consumers alike. If licensees have questions about COVID-related issues, we refer them to their local public health agency or the state's Department of Public Health for guidance. Number two, legislation. The board's bill, Senate Bill 534, in collaboration with the Dental Hygiene Association to address multiple board issues, was signed into law by the governor in October. Some issues include the addition of remedial education to the terms of probation, if needed, RDHAP mobile dental hygiene clinic oversight, and adding a feasibility study as a requirement for any new dental hygiene educational program proposals, since there is currently over 24 dental hygiene schools throughout the state. We're excited that this legislation passed to enhance and address our business practices. In addition, board staff was preparing for our 2022 sunset review. However, the administration extended our sunset date through Senate Bill 607 until January 1st, 2024, due to their current time constraints to address other issues. We will be working on the draft report next year to present to the board for approval and subsequently the legislature in 2023. Number 3, regulations. We continue to work on promulgating new regulations and identifying the need to revise existing regulatory sections as needed. Most of these are continuing in the regulatory process since our last report, with several departmental and agency reviews prior to moving forward to the Office of Administrative Law for approval. We currently have 8 regulatory packages in various stages of the regulatory review process. Issues such as clarifying coursework and teaching methodologies for dental hygiene educational programs, retired license category, and ability for a registered dental hygienist and alternative practice to provide local anesthesia and soft tissue curettage in collaboration with, but not under the direct supervision of a licensed dentist, are being addressed through regulations. Number 4, dental relationships. I wanted to inform you that pursuant to Business and Profession Code Section 1930, a registered dental hygienist and alternative practice, RDHAP, is required to have a relationship with at least one licensed dentist for referral, consultation, and emergency services, since they provide their hygiene services autonomously to the consumer in certain settings, such as residents of the homebound, institutions, schools, residential facilities, etc., assisting the underserved population. Until now, the board only requested such a relationship to be reported to the board in the required documentation at the time of license issuance without follow-up. However, over the past few years, we've been receiving more communications from both dentists and RDHAPs that relationships were terminated, never existed, or they were unaware of this requirement, which places the consumer at risk. As such, the board decided to submit regulations to implement the requirement that all RDHAPs must report a relationship with at least one licensed dentist at every license renewal. This is so the board is aware that an RDHAP is providing the services safely and have a referral source for any complex dental issues. The RDHAP will need to report the dentist's name and license number to the board for reference and should not have any disciplinary action against them. The regulation is currently proceeding through the regulatory process and will hopefully be approved sometime next year. Number 5, educational programs. Site visits to dental hygiene educational programs resumed, so the board can review them to obtain a baseline of operations moving forward. We're also making recommendations for any changes or revisions needed to be made for the program to be in compliance with the law and CODA standards. When we began these site visits in 2016, it was projected that it would take about 5 years to complete an initial review of each school, since there are 29 total dental hygiene programs in the state. Even with several schools needing follow-up visits and the unexpected pandemic, we're on track to complete all first-time reviews of the schools within 6 years, barring any unexpected issues arising. Wet laboratory waiver update. The temporarily approved wet laboratory waiver was extended by the administration and is set to expire on December 31st, 2021. And unless circumstances change, it will be permanently ended. The waiver allows students to complete their biomedical science prerequisite coursework online without an actual wet laboratory, so they can obtain science credit for those courses as deemed acceptable by the educational institution for entry into the dental hygiene program. Regulatory changes are in the works to accommodate for any teaching methodology revisions in a state of emergency. Number 6, alternative pathways to licensure. The board established a task force earlier this year to research the possibility of alternative pathways to dental hygiene licensure and have met several times to discuss the issue. The task force is just beginning its research and consists of board members, educators, and licensees to find alternative pathway recommendations to present to the board for review. Number 7, personnel. The board will see a drastic change over the next year as some of our long-term board members will be termed out while serving their grace year. 5 members, including myself, will no longer be part of the Dental Hygiene Board, so this will be my last update that I provide to you. For staff, we continue to fill our vacant positions as quickly as possible to address the board's work and currently have 2 vacancies which should be filled in the next couple of months. That concludes my report, and I want to thank you for the continued efforts to collaborate on dental issues with us. It has been my pleasure to update you on our board's activities while serving as president. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I do not see any questions, but Dr. Martinez, thank you for your report and thank you for serving on the Dental Hygiene Board of California.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Hearing no public comments, please close the line for public comment. Moderator?
President Pacheco, can you hold one moment, please?
Sure.
All right, looks like we do have requests for public comment from Dr. Moratuso. Dr. Moratuso, I will give you 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Martinez. So we speak again. I have been basically begging and pleading for anyone at the dental board to explain to me how the voluminous evidence that I have in emails, in photos, in audio of the fraud under Borrego of over $400 million, 80% of it by California licensed dentists, which would mean California licensed dentists under Borrego on your watch committed over $360 million in fraud. Why I am the sole licensee who has had their license acted upon, let alone revoked. I've spoken to colleagues on the East Coast, and Dr. Martinez, your reputation in Massachusetts, it precedes you all the way out here.
This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. I'd like to remind the public commenter that this item, that comments need to be limited to this item only, which was the Board of Hygiene report. This is not about any disciplinary matters. If you want to
it's about
request,
federal
I
fraud, FBI, and his
right. But if you're, it sounds like you're talking about you're talking about a particular case, which this board cannot review until it receives the case for review as part of a proposed decision.
How with all of this going on, has he even been allowed to keep his position as president of the Dental Hygiene Board? How? Morally and ethically.
Okay, well, your comment is not properly addressed to the board, the Dental Board of California.
At what
So
point?
unless you have a comment
I have a question.
on this agenda item in particular, which was just a report, we're going to need to move on.
At what point does California Dental Board sanction a dentist that is connected to over $400 million?
All right, this is the moderator. Unfortunately, we had to mute the individual as the comment was not on topic. At this point, Board President, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. We will now move on to agenda item 9, discussion and possible action to update the board's strategic plan. I'm going to ask Karen Fisher, Executive Officer, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, President Pacheco. We are now on page 32 of the meeting material packet. Just as a summary, and that's what the memo essentially is a summary that the board met in a workshop format on October 15th via a publicly noticed WebEx meeting to engage in the planning process for the strategic plan for the next 4 years. The meeting was facilitated by representatives from the Department of Consumer Affairs Solid Planning Solutions. The board at the time reviewed the environmental scan and determined essentially what the goals and objectives will be for the next 4 years. Following this memo on page 33, I'd like to go through the, start to go through the draft plan in order to, for the board to adopt it today, hopefully. And so if we'll start on looking on page 38 of the meeting materials, the first goal is relating to licensing and examinations. And it's to provide a licensing process that permits applicants timely access to the workforce without compromising consumer protection. Administer fair, valid, timely, comprehensive, and relevant licensing examinations. And so basically the board developed these 6 objectives under this goal. And they're pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted to clarify the language in 1.3, and if it's approved, we'll move that on as an amendment to this draft. Essentially, 1.3 should I say something more like identify and partner with stakeholders to examine problems and challenges in dental assisting, determine whether there is a workforce shortage, and work towards removing barriers to licensure for RDA, RDA-EF to expand access to care. I think that's a little more clear. And then we continue on with 1.4, evaluate and change, if necessary, dental assisting licensure requirements, which include educational exam requirements to decrease barriers to licensure and increase license portability across states. 1.5, evaluate and improve the continuing education audit process to ensure licensee compliance. And 1.6 is to review and revise licensure pathways to remove barriers to licensure. So I just want to remind board members that we had a lengthy document to go through, and we narrowed it down to these 6 objectives. Now, what board staff will go through and do now is assign action items to each of these objectives. So some of the things that we discussed in the workshop included, for instance, under objective 1.4, that we would evaluate processes such as why are there high failure rates with the RDA programs, review exam content, educational processes, exam performance, and identify if these are barriers to the pipeline and remediate. So a lot of the things we discussed, I think the board determined that they would be action items rather than objectives. So you will be seeing those as we move on and as we continue to put more specificity into this plan. Are there any questions from board members on Goal 1? Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, let's go on to goal number 2, which is consumer protection.
Hi, this is Alicia Montel. I raised my hand, but I don't think you guys can see it, so I'm just going to
No, you can't. Go ahead, Dr. Montel.
Thank you. Just to clarify for 1.3 and 1.4, I mean, is that specifically we're talking about RDA and RDAEF because as a board we're only dealing with the licensure, or are we going to include unlicensed dental assistants in these explorations as to challenges and problems in the workforce?
I believe we could add unlicensed dental assistants to this objective.
Okay, great. I mean, just at least to make the language a little bit more general so that we can include that population. That's my recommendation.
Okay, and so within 1.3 to say something like, do you have a suggestion about how you might want to change that? So,
well, do we have to say to remove barriers to licensure for RDA, RDAEF, or can we just say to remove any, let's see.
Yeah, to remove barriers to licensure for the dental assisting community?
Sure, for, yeah, dental assistants and RDA or RDAEFs. You could just list them all if you wanted to.
I think just, yeah, dental assisting would, I think, encompass everything. Dental assistants, RDAs, RDAEFs.
Yeah, that would be.
If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and add that language. And if anybody else is having trouble with the raise hand feature, just jump in. Thank you, Dr. Montel. We'll go on to goal number 2, consumer protection and enforcement. Ensure the board's enforcement and diversion programs provide timely and equitable consumer protection. The first objective would be to evaluate additional enforcement tools, including hiring additional staff, recruiting more investigators, and tracking unethical dentists to reduce investigation timelines. The second objective is to contract with a vendor to audit and recommend improvements to the enforcement program's workload efficiency and effectiveness. And the third objective would be to explore increasing per diem compensation for expert witnesses and implement change if necessary so that the board can recruit the most qualified professionals. Did any board members have any additional comments on this goal and these objectives? Okay, thank you. We're moving on to goal number 3, communication and customer service. Provide the most current information and quality customer service to the board stakeholders. We had a lot of discussion about this, and a lot of the issues that were brought up within the environmental scan will actually be possible action items. So 3.1 says research and implement, if possible, outreach to underserved communities regarding free clinics and healthcare events to support access to care for underserved communities. The second objective is to research and evaluate various communication methods, print, website, social media, to determine the best methods for effective communication with consumers, licensees, and stakeholders. The third objective is to provide ongoing updates to board member onboarding information so board members have sufficient reference tools. And the fourth objective would be to develop outreach to consumer and enforcement education for applicants and licensees to improve their understanding of board functions and dental professional laws. Again, some of the items that would be action items under 3.2 would be implement a new phone system to provide customer service metrics, develop a web and telephone interface for better communication, constantly review and monitor the website for enhancements. So all these things that we discussed during that October session will probably end up to be action items that will be listed underneath these objectives. Do any of the members have any additional comments or questions about Goal 3? And I don't know that the hand features are working. So I do see Dr. Morrow and Dr. Lardin. So Dr. Morrow, what's your comment? Dr. Morrow?
Am I with you?
You are now.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, on 3.1, relating to implement and possible outreach to underserved communities, I'm not opposed to that for sure, but I'm just wondering, how does that fit into the to the purpose of the board in protecting the public, other than the fact that we make sure that community free clinics are supported by licensed providers, but to provide access to care for underserved populations, while it's an important thing, I think, to do, I'm not sure that it fits into the purpose of and the duties and responsibilities of the Dental Board of California. So I'm wondering, what are the action items that the board might be involved with in promoting outreach to underserved communities?
Thank you for that comment, Dr. Morrow. I believe that our management team is going to be working with Solid in the coming weeks to see if we can define the action items. And if there are any questions moving forward, we will definitely bring that back to the board. But essentially, staff would not move forward with necessarily implementing these objectives without first letting the board know what the plan is. Does that suffice for your comment?
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Dr. Loren?
Yes, that was also sort of the question I had, but we do have an access to care committee, which is not active because there's not much we can do with it. And part of this, number one, is that we were going to look into funding. We were supposed to find out if there was actual funding, because that's the reason we couldn't do any of that. So I don't know if this should be added or just, is that okay just to put research and implement, or find funds or see if we have enough funds to implement these things? That was one of the issues that came up at the strategic planning.
I'm not sure what you mean by funding.
Funding for the programs to outreach underserved communities on 3.1.
No, I understand you're on 3.1, but I don't understand, what are we looking for funding for?
For clinics, free clinics, healthcare events, support access to care to underserved communities, with flyers and all these educational items that we would need to be able to perform 3.1.
We can open this up for other board member comments. I don't recall that was what we were talking about. Essentially, we'll be looking at researching the options of being able to do outreach to underserved communities. And I'm not sure where the funding would come in.
Yes, that's because I'm Access to Care chair, and we spoke, and actually there was no funding to be able to do any of this access to care, these access to care programs that are under number 1, and because of funding, and that I think that's why they added if we could implement it somehow with funding. And I know this came up in the strategic planning. I mean, it's just a matter of wording, but when they do implement this or look into it, they should also look into the funding, the way we're going to fund this item, this goal or action item.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Loren. I see Dr. Felsenfeld's hand up. Are you going to help me out here? Dr. Felsenfeld?
I'm unmuted now. Sorry about that. If you look at I'm going to try as the short answer to you, Ms. Fisher. If you look at 3.1, this is a kind of a blue sky. Let's see what's out there. Let's see how we can help. I would certainly think that if we can, as a board, provide good health care, dental health care to people, or oral health care to people who otherwise don't have access to it, that's protecting the public. I think that's certainly within our overall mission. The other thing is, I think the two words, if possible, will answer the questions of funding and studies. This requires objectives, and we may fail at all of this if we can't do it, but we do have to have objectives. So this is a very broad reach type of overall objective to the plan. I think it's fine the way it's written, because we have to look at things, and if possible, we can do more, but it may not be possible.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. That was a great save. Did any other board members want to comment on this particular issue?
This is President Pacheco.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if a better term instead of implement would be support. Just a thought.
This is Alicia Montel. I just wanted to make the comment in support of what Dr. Felsenfeld said. I totally agree that I think it is part of our mission to protect the public, is looking at those populations that don't have the same access as other populations. And however we want to do that as a board is the question. So here we have an opportunity to make a move in the right direction, and I think we can specify it down as we move forward, but I totally support it. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we move on to Ms. Burton, if everybody agrees that we can change the wording to research and support, if possible, outreach to underserved communities, we'll go ahead and make that change. So why don't you think about that? And Ms. Burton, did you have a comment?
I believe that the discussion about funding was in retrospect. It was a discussion about the events that the board had been involved in when there were funds involved through the budget process. If I'm hearing Dr. Loren, we're not going to be able to raise private funds to do these.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burton. You're cutting out a bit, but I think for the benefit of the other members, Ms. Burton said, if we're talking about raising private funding to address the issue of funding in this objective, that's not going to happen. That's not within our authority to do that. But I think Dr. Felsenfeld's comment about funding would be included in this research idea, then I think that would be covered. And you're right, Ms. Burton, the board did participate in outreach at community events, but I think since the Schwarzenegger era, we stopped that because of not only furloughs, but we would hand out things other than brochures, which essentially was disallowed after a certain point. So that's a little bit of history on that. If no board members have an objection, we'll change the wording in 3.1 to say research and support if possible, and then the rest of the sentence remains the same.
Yes, Dr. Lighting, I support that, and thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld, for explaining it a little bit better what I wanted to say. I appreciate that, and I support the change.
Well, thank you, members. Okay. So I think we're ready to go on to goal number 4, which is administrative services, and build an excellent organization with engaged employees through effective leadership and responsible management. 4.1 is develop a robust onboarding and continuing education program for board staff to improve communication with consumers and licensees, staff efficiency and effectiveness, retention and job satisfaction, and employee engagement. Objective number 2 is develop and implement a program to translate the data obtained from the workforce survey required at license renewal to determine licensing trends and identify gaps with regard to access to care. And our third objective is to review and eliminate, if necessary, inactive or unnecessary committees to increase board efficiency. Underneath this section, essentially we will have action items that will address improvement of employee engagement, and some of the things that were discussed that are not required to be in the strategic plan would be move to online only acceptance of the application, encouraging online filing of complaints, and acceptance of e-signatures for enforcement and licensing complaints and applications. Are there any board member comments on any of these objectives under goal number 4? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to hand it back over to you, President Pacheco.
Okay, so the action then would be to have a motion and a second to accept the strategic plan with the changes to the language as stated. Dr. Chan.
Motion to move that forward as amended.
Thank you. And it
I second.
And
Dr.
that
Molina.
was Dr. Molina. Thank you. Okay, so the motion is to accept the strategic plan with changes to the language as stated. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator?
Oh, I apologize. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, looks like we have a request from commenter Melody Randolph. Melody, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. This is the moderator. Melody, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and it looks like you are unmuted. Oh, and she muted herself. 1 second. Melody, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone again. If you could please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry for that. Melody Randolph here, representing the Dental Assisting Educators Group, and we'd like to address goals 1.3 and 1.4. Within the wording, there seems to be an underlying premise that the extreme shortage of dental assistants that we are experiencing is due to barriers to licensure. We would disagree with that assumption. First of all, there are no barriers to becoming an unlicensed DA. As a colleague of mine often says, Taco Bell today, dental assistant tomorrow. Anyone interested in the dental field can start working in the dental office without any education, certification, or licensure. There are many other factors that play into the shortage that we are all very well aware of, including the pandemic and people leaving healthcare overall, but also other factors primarily having to do with compensation and that someone is able to get a job in Costco, for example, making $20 an hour with no education, training, whatever, and get excellent benefits and so forth. We do agree that the pass rate of the RDA exam is unacceptable and quite frankly embarrassing as a dental assisting educator, and we're in total support of trying to figure out the issues around these pass rates. We also see that there are other issues within the licensure framework that could be looked at, adjusted, changed, massaged, whatever. What we will continue to stand strong on is dedication and passion for well-educated and skilled dental assistants, and that whatever changes are considered and subsequently implemented do not water down the educational and examination requirements of dental assistants. There are many strategies that we can implement to help with the shortage, including encouraging more course providers and making the application process for course providers less cumbersome. We look forward to working with you on these two objectives.
Thank you. Moderator, are there any other public comments?
This is the moderator. One moment. All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment on this item. So therefore, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
This is Board Secretary Felsenfeld. We are on item number 9, and it's a motion to accept the strategic plan as editorially amended. Burton.
Burton, yes.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Lareen.
Lareen, aye.
Lareen, aye. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, aye. Medina.
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Montel.
Montel, aye.
Montel, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Alagi.
I'm sorry, Secretary Felsenfeld, Ms. Olagi had to leave the meeting.
She is gone for the day. Is that correct? All
I
right.
believe so.
All right. Well, mark her absent for this vote. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart.
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. You.
Aye.
We have 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 13. It looks like 13 ayes and 1 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 10, discussion and possible action regarding executive officer salary level increase. I'm going to ask Ms. Fisher to continue with this agenda item.
Thank you, President Pacheco. This should be a relatively short discussion, I would think. I just wanted to let you know that this has been an issue that board members have taken up in the past. When I was first appointed to the board, I know that board member Burton felt strongly about this issue. Basically, what's happened is the salary level for the executive officer for the dental board has not been increased since August of 2000. And so this is the initial process, if the board approves, of moving forward to do the research, to put together the documentation to see whether or not that level could be raised. We, essentially staff, would be working with DCA, OHR on developing a proposal that would be brought back to the board in February, which essentially outlines all the changes that have been made to the board since August 1st of 2000. And the memo outlines essentially what types of things would be considered, whether there were additional responsibilities added to the EO's position, whether there was organizational growth, additional programs within the board, significant staffing increases. So there are a number of items that essentially staff would begin to put together to bring back a formal proposal to the February meeting. This proposal obviously wouldn't have any effect on me since I will be retiring, but it would have an effect on being able to recruit future executive officers to have the responsibility of the oversight of this large board. So at this time, I'm requesting the board approve moving forward to request an EO salary level increase and to direct staff to work with OHR to draft the EPR, which is the exempt position request package for board discussion and possible action at the February 10 and 11, 2022 meeting.
This issue, please. This is Franford.
I have a question.
Ms. Burton, is very hard to hear you. If you could try to scream.
Want to speak to this issue, please. And the reason that I want to speak to this is because I think that perhaps other than maybe one or two people, most of you were not around when we tried so hard to adjust the executive officer salary level. And it's my very strong feeling that there is an inequity among boards, and particularly board responsibilities and the amount of discipline within boards. And so I would encourage you to support doing this work. And I'm going to say support doing this at the same time that I'm going to express a lot of frustration because I feel that we did a lot of work. And despite all of the work that we did, our executive officer has not had a salary increase. So with that, I'd like to move this item.
I have a comment. This is Dr. Molina. Hello?
Ms. Pacheco, would you like to recognize the people that have their hands up, please?
Yes. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Molina.
So since we are going to be searching for a new executive director, then could that be part of the research in terms of like what our other executive officers or executive directors are making, and how is it compared in terms of level of responsibility? So that might be part of the search for the new EO.
Ms. Fisher, would you like to comment on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to give my 2 cents to that. I would suggest that the two things will probably be conducted side by side. It will be up to the board to decide whether they would want to wait to hire the permanent position until this decision is made. This is not going to be a quick decision. If the board decides to move the package forward in February, then it has to go through a number of different levels, and eventually the decision is made by CalHR. And there's no assurance that the level is going to be raised. So I would say at this point, the board, I would recommend the board at least move forward to try to put the information together and bring it back to the February meeting to show the board what staff believes has grown and increased since the 2000 level was established, while at the same time recruiting for an executive officer.
Thank you.
That'll be up to the board. That'll be up to the board to decide if they would want to wait, which would mean whoever you put in the interim position would continue to be interim until this gets resolved.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Dr. Chan.
Thank you. This is Steve Chan. This really bothers me when there has been no change in the executive compensation in 2 decades. That is unconscionable. So when one looks at executive level compensation, you look at metrics like the size of the budget, the number of employees, the scope of what that person does. And just as a baseline, well, I'd like to, first of all, second the motion from Fran.
Thank you for that, Dr. Chan.
But let's look at what the pay band is for a comparable size organization, comparable budget. I don't understand all the pieces yet about how government works and the compensation, but the pay band is about 120,768 now at the lower part of the pay band, and it goes to 134,508 yearly for the top of the pay band now for the executive officer. In the real world, the bottom of the pay band is 183,244. The upper level of the pay band is 244,665. That's like a $90,000 difference. It's not just the money, it's what that person is worth. And you're also looking at the pool. The pool of people that will be looking at this they are looking at compensation as a matter of their worth and talents. If we go low, then we're going to get what we want because the pay band reaches a different pool. I strongly advise and would advocate moving forward with this.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. I see kind of hands going up and going down. Are there any other board comments? So right now we have a motion to approve moving forward to request an EO salary level increase and direct staff to work with OHR to draft the EPR for board discussion and possible action at the February 10/11, 2022 meeting. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, and it looks like we do have a couple requests for comments, so we will go in the order received. One moment while I get my timer up. We'll start with Bruce Witcher. Bruce, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'm requesting to unmute your microphone now.
Good afternoon. Bruce Witcher, former board member and past member of the EO Search Committee on 2 occasions. Just kind of for information, I believe the salary scale for executive officers across state government is available probably on the Cal HR website. I know when I was on the search committee, we were able to do that, find that information and look at it, so that information may be out there. And I would agree with Dr. Chan's comments that when you're looking at private sector, the salary scale for somebody with similar qualifications is going to be substantially more than what they would receive at state government. And I think the idea is state government offers benefit packages that might be attractive or maybe not. But anyway, you got to take the whole package and as a whole and decide, how attractive that will be. But I think doing this would be an excellent idea. And I do remember when we tried very hard to get this through before, a tremendous amount of work was put into it. And it really didn't go anywhere, which is very frustrating. And I know that there was a panel convened, I think by DCA, to look at EO compensation not that long ago. And you could probably access that and pull some information out of that report that would give you some guidance. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. And just as a reminder, comments need to be relevant to the agenda item that we are talking about. Dr. Moratuso, request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning.
Hi, I just had a question. So when is the current Karen Fisher, when are you retiring? Is there a hard set date for when there's going to be a need for a new executive director of the dental board?
I'm sorry, so this is Karen Fisher. Public comment is not an opportunity for you to ask questions.
Well, I've asked a couple questions in here and I've never been given answers. I've called the dental board. I've emailed as you're well aware. It's 3.5 years later. I'm just asking, when is there going to be a need for a new executive director?
By the end of the year.
Okay. So almost all the parties that acted on my license and ignored everything about Timothy Martinez and the FBI in Solidarity, everyone's retiring. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we'll be moving on to our next individual as requested public comment. Anthony Lum, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. A request to unmute your microphone now.
Good afternoon, President Pacheco and board members. This is Anthony Lum, the Dental Hygiene Board's Executive Officer. I'm just going to go back a little bit in history on this comment because I used to work at the Dental Board back in 07 and 08, overseeing administrative functions. And even at that time when I was overseeing the Dental Board's budget, I opined that the executive officer's level and salary were way under par at that point in time. So for it not to be changed for over 2 decades, I agree with the prior comments that it's time to move them to their appropriate levels. So thank you for the opportunity. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, this is the moderator, and it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item.
This is Dr. Felsenfeld, Board Secretary, on item number 10. The motion is to approve moving forward to request an EO salary level increase and direct staff to work with the OHR to draft the EPR for board discussion and possible action at the February 2022 meeting. Burton?
Yes.
Burton, aye. Was that an aye, Ms. Burton?
Yes.
Thank you. Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Lareen?
Lareen, aye.
Lareen, aye. Mackenzie?
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, aye. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza?
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Montel?
Montel, aye.
Tell, aye. Morrow?
Strongly aye.
Strongly aye. Morrow. I assume Ms. Alagi is still not with us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart?
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. You?
You, strongly aye too.
We have 2 strongly ayes, Dr. Yu. Thank you. There are 13 ayes, 1 absent. The motion is carried.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 11, A through B, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding process for recruitment and selection of the executive officer. I will ask Olivia Trejo from the DCA Office of Human Resources to present this agenda item.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Olivia Trejo, and I am the Assistant HR Chief for the Department of Consumer Affairs. And today, during this open session, I will provide you with an overview of the Executive Officer recruitment and selection process, review the duty statement and recruitment announcement, and during closed session, discuss the appointment of a possible interim or acting executive officer. However, I would like to first take this opportunity to congratulate Executive Officer Fisher on her upcoming retirement, and we wish you the best on this new milestone. The Executive Officer recruitment and selection process will require 2 members who will have time and interest to participate in the selection process. We do plan to formally appoint a search committee in today's meeting. The members will be chosen by the board to be part of the search committee to assist with the entire recruitment activities. As mentioned in today's meeting, we will have the opportunity to review and finalize the duty statement and recruitment announcement, which will be used for the executive officer advertisement. And I would like to add that the salary noted on the announcement will be what the salary is currently. The recruitment is typically advertised for 30 days and is advertised on CaliHR's platform. And CaliHR is the California Department of Human Resources, but may also be advertised externally, such as through the Capital Morning Report. If the selection committee or the search committee chooses to advertise outside of CaliHR, then we can work with them and the Office of Human Resources on doing so. During the advertisement period, I or a designee will work directly with the search committee to determine the application screening, interview questions, and potential interview dates. I or a designee will serve as the contact person on the advertisement and will provide the search committee with the applications received each Friday on a flow basis until the final filing date is done. The search committee will review and screen the applications received based on the desirable qualifications that will be noted on the recruitment flyer to determine candidates for initial and/or final interviews. Depending on the number of applications received, if initial interviews are recommended based on a large candidate pool, they will be conducted with the search committee only. Reference checks will be conducted for the top candidates prior to final interviews with all board members. At a next scheduled board meeting in closed session, final interviews will be conducted for the top candidates. Upon selecting the finalist for the executive officer position, a start date and salary can be determined, and in accordance with Business and Profession Code Section 1616.5A, the appointment will require DCA's director approval. The selection of the candidate must be kept confidential until the candidate notifications have been completed and accepted, and the unsuccessful candidates have been notified. The selected candidate will also require a criminal offender record information clearance, otherwise known as CORI, which will be facilitated by the Office of Human Resources. Once the selected candidate has passed CORI, the board can work with Public Affairs to make the formal announcement. On the effective date of the appointment, the oath of office will be administered, which HR will assist in the facilitation and can be provided direction at a later point. This concludes the overview of the executive officer recruitment process, and I am available to answer any questions you may have on the process. And moderator, I don't believe I'm able to see any questions or any hands raised, so.
This is the moderator. I do not see any hands raised either. So I don't think there are any board member comments.
Okay.
All right, this is President Pacheco, and then we are looking for a motion and a second.
This is Angie Medina, so moved.
President Pacheco,
Yes.
excuse the interruption.
There's no action.
I think you need to say what the motion is. And I believe it's to delegate to the Office of Human Resources the authority to advertise the position and to coordinate and set interviews of candidates for the position.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Medina, and is it Dr. Yu? You have your hand up. Are you seconding the motion?
You second.
You second. Thank you. Are there any other additional board member comments? If not, we will go right to public comments. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Just as a reminder, please keep your comments on topic, and also do not ask, we will not be answering questions. This is only means for you to make a verbal comment. I'll go ahead and pause to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item.
This is Board Secretary Felsenfeld. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. The motion is to move to delegate to the Office of Human Resources the authority to advertise the position of executive officer and coordinate and set interviews of candidates for the position. Burton.
Burton, aye.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Loreen.
Loreen, aye.
Loreen, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina.
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Montel.
Montel, aye.
Montel, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Alagi, absent. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart.
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. You.
You, aye.
You, aye. There are 13 ayes, 1 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 11C, discussion and possible action on appointment of EO Selection Committee. I will ask Ms. Fisher to present this agenda item.
Thank you, President Pacheco. This is just a reiteration of what Ms. Trejo just outlined for you. And so essentially this item is directly related to the board discussing appointing the 2-person subcommittee. I don't think that there should be any questions, but I'm going to hand it back to you, President Pacheco, to open it for discussion. And I saw Ms. Burton's hand was up.
Ms. Burton.
Okay, this is another place where I get to speak as an old member here. When I came on the board in 2009, before the end of that year, we were searching for an executive officer at that time. And so I have seen how this works. I see the importance of the intimate relationship between the board president and the executive officer, because that way the board president is one who has a day-to-day or a weekly knowledge of what's going on with the board. And so that being the case, I would like to suggest that the 2-person selection committee be two former presidents. And I believe that's Pacheco and Morrow. And so I'd like to move that as a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Do we have a second on the motion?
Dr. Yu's hand has been up. I don't know whether that's new. And then I see Dr. Chan and Dr. Loren and Dr. Molina.
Okay, should we take comments first before we move the second?
No.
Okay, Dr. Chan.
I have a comment.
I see Dr. Chan's, well, we will move down. Dr. Chan?
Motion.
Okay, Dr. Chan seconds the motion.
I would like to make a comment before we vote.
Okay.
I think that it has been great that Ms. Burton was working with Karen all these years, and they got along really well. And a lot was accomplished since some of the board members are going to be new and is going to be a different dynamic. I think that those should be the members that should be interviewing the new executive director, so that they can choose someone that they're going to be able to work with and have an amicable relationship to get a lot of work done.
Thank you, Dr. Molina.
Welcome.
Ms. Burton? You had your hand up, Ms. Burton?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
I'm going to say that my observation, and I don't know whether it's because of the uniqueness of this year, I've heard a lot of members express a lack of an understanding of the process and a lack of understanding of board member roles compared to that of the executive officer and the executive officer's authority over staff. And so, with all due respect, Dr. Molina, this has nothing to do with my relationship. What this has to do with is having some individuals who can conduct this interview, look for the best person given their knowledge of the inner working of the board.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. We have a motion and a second. The motion is move to appoint Dr. Morrow and Ms. Pacheco to the selection committee for the executive officer appointment. I'd like to open for public comments. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
This is Board Secretary Felsenfeld. The motion is to appoint Ms. Pacheco and Dr. Morrow to the selection committee for the new executive officer, excuse me. And Burton.
Burton, aye.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld is aye. Lareen.
Lorraine, aye.
Lareen, aye. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, aye. Medina.
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Montel.
Montel, aye.
Montel, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Alagi, absent. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart.
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. You.
You, aye.
You, aye. There are 13 ayes, 1 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 11D, review and possible action on revised EO duty statement and recruitment announcement. I will ask Ms. Fisher to continue with this agenda item.
Thank you, President Pacheco. And I just wanted to let Dr. Molina know that the selection committee will just be doing the initial interviews as are outlined and the duties that are outlined in the agenda item. But ultimately, the full board makes the final decision, and each individual board member will be allowed to ask questions of the final candidates coming forward. So the full board members still have an opportunity definitely to weigh in on the selection of the new the new executive officer. So I wanted to clarify that before moving on.
Thank you, Karen, for the clarification. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So the next item is found on page 48 of your meeting materials, and it's to review and approve essentially the duty statement and recruitment announcement for the position. And I hope you all have had the opportunity to review that. We're not going to go over it here. And I think that Olivia will be available to answer any questions you might have about the duty statement and the recruitment notice. So President Pacheco, if you would just like to open it up for discussion or questions,
Yes.
that'd be great.
Any comments? Ms. Burton, I see your hand is up. Ms. Burton? I can barely hear you.
That was inadvertent.
Oh, inadvertent. Okay.
It is us.
I do not see any more board member comments. Do we have a motion to adopt recruitment announcement and move to adopt proposed duty statement with revisions as shown in the meeting packet?
This is Olivia with the Office of Human Resources. On the recruitment announcement, it's general, but it does cover board information, the roles and responsibilities of the executive officer, and then the desirable qualifications that you will be looking for in a candidate. There are also an opportunity to submit a statement of qualifications, and the board will need to also vote on the number of pages that you are willing to accept on the statement of qualifications. On the flyer right now, we put 6 as a filler, but it can be 3 pages, 4 pages, but the board will need to vote on the number of pages that the statement of qualifications will need to consist of.
Okay. Dr. Felsenfeld, I see your hand is up.
I am going to move that we adopt the recruitment announcement and move to adopt the proposed duty statement with revisions, except I would accept the 6 pages because I don't think we really understand how many pages you want to have in that statement. So as it's written.
Thank you.
President Pacheco, this is Executive Officer Fisher. Can we separate out the motions here and first look at the duty statement and essentially let's have a vote on that. And then I think that what Mr. Trejo was trying to say is, six pages of a statement of qualification is a lot of information. What the subcommittee will also be reviewing is the state application, which oftentimes has the same information as well as a resume or a curriculum vitae. So the board might want to consider whether or not they do want to have the full 6 pages or whether or not the candidates can essentially submit a statement of qualification with fewer pages. Primarily what you're looking at for the statement of qualifications is whether the executive officer can write first of all, and then whether they can succinctly say how their qualifications would fit into this recruitment process. So President Pacheco, if you're agreeable to separate these out just to see, you know, if there's, I think there should be further discussion, but maybe not. And also, Ms. Trejo, the other things that are highlighted, are those meant to the board's decision to make, or is that, will that be decided by the subcommittee as we move forward?
On the recruitment flyer, it will be decided with the search committee as we move forward.
Okay. Okay. All right. President Pacheco, would you like to call for the vote on the duty statement?
Yes. Okay, so motion to adopt the duty statement. Dr. Felsenfeld, would that be you?
I'm sorry, I've lost track. Did we do public comment? Maybe we should do public comment on the duty statement.
Okay, well,
We can still have a motion
first
to.
and a second?
Yeah, I will still move that.
Okay, and I believe, was it Dr. Yu that seconded it?
You second.
Uh-huh. Okay, now we're ready to move to public comment. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And board secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for the duty statement.
This is the board secretary Felsenfeld. The motion is to approve the EO duty statement. Burton.
Burton, aye.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Loreen.
Loreen, aye.
Loreen, aye. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, aye. Medina.
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina. Molina, Dr. Molina. We'll come back. Montel, Dr. Montel.
Montel,
Molina, aye.
Thank you, Molina. Montel.
Montel, aye.
Aye. Montel, aye. Morrow, aye. I'm sorry, Morrow.
Yeah,
A little
thank
ahead
you.
of myself there, Steve. Sorry.
Thanks for helping me out. Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Alagi is absent. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart.
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. And you.
You aye.
You, aye. There are 13 ayes, 1 absent. This motion passes.
Thank you. Now we will move on for a motion to approve the recruitment announcement, which will include the statement of qualifications. And did we happen to agree on page numbers, or are we just leaving it as a statement of qualification?
A number should be indicated.
Okay. And guidance in number of pages.
There you go.
Is it fair to say 3?
This is Steve Chan. I participated in about maybe 8 or 9 executive searches for nonprofits as well as for-profit companies. And I've seen no more than 2 pages. And more than that, it does reveal the candidate. In other words, it reveals shortfalls.
Mm-hmm. And do we have a motion to approve the recruitment announcement with a statement of qualifications with 2 pages?
This is Stephen Morrow. I would like us to consider rewording that number of pages as not to exceed more than 3 pages.
Okay. So a motion by Dr. Morrow to approve the recruitment announcement with a statement of qualifications not to exceed 3 pages.
I would second that. That's Fran Burton.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Any other board comments? Dr. Loren? And no,
No,
you're.
I was just going to second. I was going to second. I was
Okay,
dropping.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we need to seek public comment. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
This is Board Secretary Felsenfeld. Moderator, would you take the hand down next to my name? I cannot get it to happen. So
Sure thing.
we are now voting on 11D to approve the recruitment announcement not to exceed 3 pages. Burton.
Burton, aye.
Burton, aye. Chan.
Aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld, aye. Loreen.
Lorraine, aye.
Loreen, aye. Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
Mackenzie, aye. Medina.
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Mendoza, aye. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina. Montel.
Montel, aye.
Montel. Morrow is aye. Morrow, make a decision yourself today.
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Alagi is absent. Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Stewart.
Stewart, aye.
Stewart, aye. You.
You, aye.
You, aye. There are 13 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The motion is adopted.
Okay, Alan, I get to vote for you once now, okay?
Thank you if you wish. That's up to you. Okay.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
This concludes the open session portion of this meeting on Thursday, November 18, 2021. The board will now recess into closed session, and at the conclusion of the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned. Due to technological limitations, adjournment of closed session will not be broadcast, and this meeting is recessed until Friday, November 19, 2021 at 9 a.m. Thank you.